My name is Erin Walker. I am 36 years old, a veterinary clinic operations manager in Portland, Oregon, and at 3:30 on a Saturday afternoon, I walked into my younger sister's animal rescue grand opening and saw my name on vaccine records I had never signed. The lobby smelled like fresh paint, disinfectant, wet dog, cheap flowers, and the kind of excitement people mistake for safety when cameras are rolling. A banner stretched across the front desk. Second Chance Paws Rescue Grand Opening Gala. Donors stood near folding tables with coffee cups and pledge cards. Volunteers in matching teal shirts held puppies for photos. Local pet bloggers filmed the kennels like every bark was content. My sister Paige stood under the banner, holding a fluffy tan puppy against her chest, smiling like she had personally pulled every animal from the edge of death. Her fiancé Logan had a phone on a gimbal, live streaming her from the perfect angle. My mother, Marcia, stood beside them, proud and tearful, ready to turn Paige into a saint. My father, Dennis, hovered near the donation table, pretending not to see me arrive. Then a volunteer handed me a badge that said Kennel Support. Not medical records supervisor, not compliance lead, not founder, not even operations, Kennel Support. In my left hand was the blue leash that had belonged to Milo, my late rescue dog, the one who survived because someone had cared enough to check intake notes, quarantine him properly, and catch his infection before it killed him. In my tote was a gray veterinary compliance folder with my original intake templates, vaccine tracking sheets, foster agreements, emergency vet invoices, refusal emails, forged signature pages, and the county inspection packet that had been emailed to me that morning by mistake. Then my mother raised her voice in front of donors, volunteers, and local press and said, "Erin only cleaned cages. Paige was the one with the heart to actually save them." People laughed softly. Paige tilted her head like she was embarrassed by too much praise. Logan zoomed in. I pressed Milo's brass tag into my palm and looked toward the kennel corridor, where County Animal Services Inspector Carlin Wynn was already holding a tablet with the vaccine records open. Before I tell you what happened when Carla asked who signed those records and my sister stopped smiling, tell me this first. What time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? I want to know how far this story travels before my family understands that compassion without records can still hurt the helpless. Paige had always been the daughter people described with soft words. Sweet, tender, big-hearted, sensitive. She cried at dog food commercials and brought home stray kittens without checking whether they had fleas, vaccines, ringworm, or a place to quarantine from the animals already in the house. I was the older daughter with gloves, forms, disinfectant, carrier labels, and the terrible habit of asking whether a bleeding puppy had seen a vet before someone posted a selfie with it. My mother called Paige compassionate. She called me cold. Paige saved animals. I managed problems. Paige felt things deeply. I ruined the mood by mentioning parvo risk, rabies certificates, transport permits, and whether a foster family had signed an agreement before taking a dog across county lines. My father's favorite line was, "Your sister just wants to help." He said it whenever Paige created an emergency that someone else had to clean up. When I said good intentions could still kill an animal, Mom said I had spent too much time around clinics and not enough time around love. Milo was the reason I stopped apologizing for rules. I found him 10 years earlier behind a closed grocery store, skinny, shaking, covered in mange, with one blue leash wrapped around his back leg like someone had tied him somewhere and he had chewed free. He should have been quarantined immediately, checked for contagion, vaccinated on schedule, and monitored for respiratory symptoms. The rescue that first took him in skipped half of that because they were overcrowded and desperate to get him into a foster photo. He crashed 3 days later. I was the clinic operations manager on shift when he came in with a fever, green discharge, and the kind of tired eyes that make even experienced techs stop talking. His intake record was messy. His vaccine status was unclear. No one knew what dogs he had been near. That chaos nearly cost him his life. He survived because a vet caught the infection, because we reconstructed the missing record, because we traced his contacts, and because paperwork finally caught up to compassion. I adopted him after 6 weeks. He lived 8 good years, stole socks, hated thunderstorms, and slept with one paw on my foot. When he died, I kept the blue leash and his brass tag. Not because I needed an object to remember him, because that leash reminded me that love without a system is not always rescue. Sometimes it is just risk with a softer voice. Paige never understood that. Or maybe she understood and did not care because systems were less photogenic than tears. She started with small rescue posts. Found kitten needs help. Senior dog dumped again. Emergency foster needed tonight. People donated because Paige was beautiful when she was emotional. She would cry in her car holding a carrier and say, "I could not leave him there." Then she would call me and say, "Can you get him into your clinic?" At first I helped because the animals were real. I paid after-hours exam fees. I arranged discounted spay and neuter slots. I found fosters who knew how to isolate new arrivals. I built a basic intake form for her because she had been writing, "Sweet boy, scared," where vaccine status belonged. I trained her volunteers on kennel cleaning after one foster's whole litter got diarrhea from shared equipment. I wrote adoption contracts after Paige nearly placed a reactive dog with a family that had 2 toddlers and no fence. Every time I stopped a disaster, Paige posted a rescue update about the power of love. Every time I asked for records, my mother said, "Erin, animals need homes, not your spreadsheets." The family pattern was already old by then. When Paige got praised, I had usually paid. When Paige got called brave, I had usually cleaned up the risk. When Paige got overwhelmed, I became the practical one who did not need thanks because I was good at that stuff. Once, Paige took in 11 dogs from a backyard breeder without confirming vaccine history. I spent 2 nights building quarantine groups, calling fosters, and begging the clinic owner for discounted exams. Paige posted a photo of herself with the smallest puppy tucked under her chin and wrote, "This is why I never say no." I commented, "Please make sure fosters follow the quarantine chart." She deleted my comment. Mom texted me, "Do not shame your sister when she is doing God's work." I wanted to ask whether God had signed the foster agreement. The shelter opening should have been the foster agreement. The shelter opening should have been the moment I finally stopped helping. It should have been. But animals have a way of standing between you and your own boundaries. Paige told me Second Chance Paws would be small, foster-based, transparent, and careful. She said Logan had found a donated warehouse space in Portland, and several donors wanted to help. She asked me to review the intake system. "Just review," she promised. "You do not have to be involved unless you want to." I sent her templates with watermark notes. Sample only, not for submission. I wrote a quarantine protocol. I built a vaccine tracking sheet. I drafted foster agreements. I gave her a donor transparency plan because rescue money gets messy fast when people give for specific animals. I sent her an email in bold. "Do not submit my name, clinic role, signature, templates, or records as official medical supervision. I am not your medical records supervisor. I will not be responsible for animals I have not assessed." She replied with 3 hearts and, "You are the best big sister." That should have frightened me more than it did. Logan turned the rescue into a brand before it became a safe facility. He made reels with slow-motion dogs running through filtered light. He designed merch. He wrote captions about saving the voiceless. He filmed Paige walking down kennel rows while volunteers clapped. He called me once to ask if quarantine sounded too negative for donors. I told him parvo sounded worse. He laughed like I had made a joke. He wanted rescue to feel like a movement. I wanted kennel logs that matched actual animals. Paige wanted to say yes to every transport. I wanted vaccine records before intake. My mother wanted donors to see Paige as an angel. My father wanted nobody to argue. The animals just needed adults to stop using them as proof of goodness. The first real warning came 2 weeks before the opening. A foster named Callie called me because she had received 2 dogs from Paige with no vaccine cards, no intake numbers, and no signed medical consent. One dog was coughing. I told her to isolate immediately and call the vet. Paige got furious. "You are scaring fosters away." I said, "A coughing dog should scare you." She cried to Mom. Mom called and said I was jealous because Paige had the courage to open a shelter while I stayed behind a front desk. I said, "I manage a clinic with 40 employees." She said, "Exactly. You manage. Paige saves." That sentence stayed in my body like a splinter. The county email arrived opening morning at 9:06. Final inspection packet for Second Chance Paws Rescue. Erin Walker listed as medical records supervisor. Please verify availability during today's opening inspection. Attached were vaccine logs, intake approvals, transport forms, and a medical supervision acknowledgement bearing my signature. I sat at my kitchen table with Milo's leash beside my laptop and felt the floor drop under me. The signature was copied from an old clinic permission form I had signed 2 years earlier for a charity vaccine day. The file showed 28 animals on site, 9 foster homes pending, 6 donor pledges announced, a weekend adoption event scheduled. Several vaccine entries had batch numbers that did not match the clinic supply format. 2 dogs marked current had no visible intake exam attached. A senior beagle named Daisy had a pending adoption note, but no completed quarantine clearance. My name was attached to all of it. I called County Animal Services and reached Carlin Nguyen. I knew her professionally. She was precise, calm, and allergic to sloppy rescues. I told her I had not signed the medical records supervisor acknowledgement and had not approved any vaccine records. Her silence changed temperature. She asked if I had documentation. I said yes. She said she would be at the opening. Bring everything, she said. I printed the county packet, my refusal emails, the sample template metadata, the forged signature page, my clinic signature comparison, vet invoices I had paid, and the volunteer training attendance sheets I had actually run. I added the emergency bills, $18,700 over 3 years. I added the foster placement list, 42 animals. I added the quarantine warnings I had sent Paige. I added 1 photo of Milo from his first week at home, wearing that blue leash, eyes still uncertain but alive. Evidence does not need to be pretty. It needs to be complete. At 3:10, before the ribbon cutting, Logan stopped me at the entrance. He had a clipboard in one hand and his camera rig in the other. "We're doing a family rescue blessing board," he said. "Just quick signatures before we start." The top page was a cute poster with paw prints and a line that said, "Together we save them." Under it was a compliance acknowledgement confirming I accepted responsibility for medical record review, vaccine log oversight, intake accuracy, quarantine protocol approval, and foster clearance under Second Chance Paws. My signature line was highlighted. The audacity would have been funny if 28 animals were not behind the kennels. I looked at Logan. "This is not a blessing board." His smile tightened. "It just confirms what you have already helped with." I helped with templates. I did not authorize records. Paige appeared beside him holding the tan puppy. "Erin, please, not today." "Then why did you put my name in the county packet?" Her eyes flicked to Logan. That was the first answer. Mom came rushing over. "Do not start. Donors are here." I looked through the lobby window at the dogs pacing in kennels. That is exactly why I am starting. The grand opening moved forward because people who build events on lies always think momentum will protect them. Paige stepped under the banner with the puppy. Logan pointed the live stream toward her. My mother dabbed tears. Dad looked at my folder and then at the floor. A volunteer handed out cookies shaped like paw prints. A donor asked whether the adoption event would begin after inspection. Paige said yes, confidently, publicly, falsely. Then Mom gave her quote about me only cleaning cages, and the room chuckled. I watched Carla arrive through the front door in a navy blazer, county badge clipped to her pocket, tablet already open. She heard enough. I saw it in her face. Paige began her speech. She talked about compassion, second chances, the ones nobody else would save, and how rescue meant opening your heart before everything was perfect. That line made donors nod. It made my stomach tighten. Rescue does not wait for perfection, but it does require minimum safety. "We have built this with family," Paige said, smiling at me for the cameras. "Even my sister Erin helped behind the scenes with little kennel things." Little kennel things. My intake system was on her front desk. My vaccine template was in her county file. My foster agreements were in her folders. My signature was forged into responsibility. And I had been reduced to cage cleaner. Carla did not wait for the ribbon. "Before animals are released for adoption or foster transfer today," she said, "I need to verify medical record approval." The room went quiet in pieces. First the volunteers, then the donors, then Logan's livestream audience, visible in the comments flying slower. Paige smiled too brightly. Of course, Erin helped us with that. I stepped forward. No, I did not. Paige's face froze. Mom hissed, Erin! I said, show the records. Carla opened the first file on her tablet. Medical Records Supervisor, Erin Walker. Vaccine logs approved by Erin Walker. Quarantine protocol approved by Erin Walker. She looked at me. Did you approve these? No. The word moved through the lobby like a kennel door swinging open. Logan lowered the camera slightly. Paige said, she means she did not approve every little detail. I opened the gray folder and placed my refusal email on the adoption table. I told Paige in writing not to use my name, clinic role, or signature. Then I placed the forged acknowledgement beside it. This signature was copied. Carla compared both. Her face did not change, which somehow made it worse. The submitted signature page does not appear to be verified through Erin. First proof slap. Clean. Official. The puppy in Paige's arms squirmed. She held him tighter. My mother stepped forward. This is ridiculous. Erin has always helped with the animals. She is making this technical because she is jealous. I looked at Carla. Please open Daisy's file. Paige's head snapped toward me. Daisy was the senior beagle in Kennel 6, white-faced, slow, gentle, with cloudy eyes and a tail that wagged like an apology. She had been marketed all week as the grand opening's first adoption miracle. Carla opened the file. Vaccine status marked current. Quarantine clearance marked complete. Intake exam missing. Transport record incomplete. Foster hold removed. Adoption applicant scheduled for 5 p.m. Carla's jaw tightened. Who cleared Daisy? Paige said, she came from a trusted partner. Who cleared Daisy? Carla repeated. Exact questions scare people who live in captions. Logan said, the record says Erin. I said, I never saw Daisy until I walked in. A donor near the front covered her mouth. Second proof slap. This one had cloudy beagle eyes attached to it. I walked to Kennel 6. Daisy lifted her head and sniffed Milo's leash through the bars. That almost broke me. Not the accusation, not the forged page, not my mother's insult. Daisy. A senior dog sitting behind a label that said ready because people wanted the adoption event to look successful. I turned back to the room. Compassion without records can still hurt the helpless. Paige whispered, do not use the dogs against me. You use them first, I said. Carla moved file by file. 2 missing vaccine certificates. 1 transport form without origin shelter ID. 3 foster packets missing signed medical consent. Kennel cough risk not documented. Quarantine end dates copied across multiple dogs as if someone had dragged a spreadsheet cell downward without checking intake dates. A litter of puppies had no complete deworming schedule. Volunteers who had been marked trained could not confirm they had received bite protocol or disinfectant training. One young volunteer said, we watched Paige's welcome video. Carla asked, did anyone train you on isolation procedures? The volunteer looked at Paige. Paige looked at Logan. Third proof slap. This one came from a teenager in a teal shirt who thought she had joined a rescue, not a liability map. Logan tried to step in with marketing language. We are a young nonprofit. The community has rallied around us, and we are still building capacity. Carla looked at him. Then you do not hold a public adoption event with incomplete medical records. A donor whispered, are the dogs vaccinated? Paige's eyes filled. We would never put animals at risk. I pulled out 3 emergency vet invoices. You already did when you transported dogs without verified records last month. Paige's mouth opened. I added the text she sent me after Callie's foster dog started coughing. Can you fix this quietly? Donors are watching. I placed it on the table. Logan finally stopped filming. Deletion would come later. It always does. Mom grabbed my arm near the adoption table. You are destroying your sister's dream. I looked at her hand until she let go. Her dream has animals inside it. Paige has the heart. Heart does not replace vaccines. You think paperwork makes you better. No, I said. I think paperwork keeps Daisy from being handed to the wrong home with the wrong medical history. That was the first time Daisy's name reached the donors. Several heads turned toward Kennel 6. Animals become real when they have names. That is why bad rescues love numbers and miracle labels more than records. Dad finally spoke from near the donation table. Erin did warn you, Paige. My mother turned on him. Dennis. He looked tired. She did. It was small, late, and weak, but it was true, and the room heard it. Paige looked betrayed, as if Dad telling one sentence of truth outweighed her forged paperwork. You said you believed in me, she whispered. Dad looked at the kennels. I believed you would listen to her. I almost laughed because nobody in that family had believed that enough to protect me before the inspector arrived. Carla made her decision at 4:02. Second Chance Paws Rescue's public adoption event was paused. The shelter license approval was placed on hold pending record verification, vaccine log correction, quarantine review, foster file audit, and signed medical oversight clarification. No animal could be transferred that weekend without county approval. Donor pledges tied to immediate adoptions or medical sponsorships had to be reviewed for transparency. Paige sat down hard on a folding chair. Logan stared at the frozen donation screen. Mom started crying louder than the dogs were barking. Nobody moved toward her. The animals had finally become the center of the room. A donor named Mrs. Avery stepped forward with a pledge card in her hand. I gave $5,000 for Daisy's senior care fund, she said. Where is that money? Logan said, it is allocated. I asked, to what account? He looked at Paige. Paige looked at Mom. Mom looked at Dad. Carla wrote something down. A donor transparency plan I had drafted months earlier sat on the front desk with my name removed. I opened my folder and showed the original. This was my plan. I told them restricted animal sponsorships needed separate tracking. Mrs. Avery folded her pledge card in half. Then pause mine. That was the money shift. Donors can forgive chaos. They hate wondering whether a named dog was used as a fundraising prop. The lobby split into groups, volunteers crying near the kennels, donors asking for clarity, bloggers whispering into phones, Logan stepping into a corner to delete posts, Kelsey-style panic with a rescue twist. Paige tried to approach Daisy's kennel, but Carla stopped her gently. For now, staff access only until records are clarified. Paige looked at me. Say something. To whom? To Carla. Tell her I care. She knows you care. She needs records. Paige's face changed, anger cutting through tears. You always wanted me to fail. I looked at the dogs. No, I wanted you to slow down before they paid for your speed. The confrontation moved into the small office behind the lobby because Carla needed statements. The room had a desk, 2 chairs, stacks of donated towels, and a whiteboard that said, Adoption Day Goals. There were paw print stickers around the edge. I hated them in that moment. Present were Carla, Paige, Logan, Mom, Dad, me, 1 volunteer coordinator, and a vet tech from a partner clinic who had arrived for the event. Carla opened the county packet. Who submitted the vaccine logs? Logan said, our office uploaded them. Who signed Erin Walker's name? Silence. He said, the forms were based on templates Erin gave us. I said, sample templates. Carla asked Paige, did Erin authorize you to list her as medical records supervisor? Paige wiped her face. She helped us from the beginning. Carla repeated, Did she authorize that role? Paige whispered. Not officially. Did she sign the acknowledgement? Paige looked at Logan. Logan said nothing. Carla waited. Waiting is a tool when someone expects emotion to fill gaps. Finally, Paige said, no. There it was. Not enough to fix the records. Enough to put truth in the room. The vet tech, a woman named Marisol, picked up the Daisy file. This dog should not have had a same-day adoption label without a completed intake exam. Paige said, we had a family ready for her. Marisol said, good families still need accurate medical history. That sentence landed softly but deep. Logan rubbed his face. We were trying to save more animals. I said, saving more does not mean tracking less. Mom muttered that I sounded like a manual. Carla looked at her and said, manuals prevent outbreaks. I liked Carla more every minute. The office door was open. I insisted. Through it, I could see Daisy lying down, chin on paws, Milo's leash still in my hand. For 1 second, I saw Milo in that kennel years earlier, sick, because someone had rushed the rescue story past the record. My voice shook for the first time. You do not get to use my name to make unsafe speed look professional. Paige started crying again, and maybe that part was real. I just wanted them out of cages. So do I said, but not into new danger. By 5 o'clock, the grand opening was no longer a gala. It was an audit. Carla required a full animal count. Every kennel tag had to match an intake file. Every vaccine record had to be verified through the administering clinic or marked unknown. Every foster home had to re-sign medical consent. Every pending adoption had to be rescheduled. The county would review transport records before approving new intakes. Donor pledges would need corrected language. Paige's rescue founder speech never resumed. The ribbon stayed uncut. The puppy she had held for photos was moved to a quiet room because he was trembling from the noise. Outside, my mother cornered me near the parking lot. Are you proud? She snapped. Those animals may lose homes because of you. They may get safer homes because of records. You are jealous because Paige built something. She built it on my signature. Families should help animals together. I held up Milo's leash. Milo almost died because people helped without tracking what mattered. She looked away. She hated Milo's story because it made my rules feel less cruel. You only cleaned cages, she said again, quieter. I said, then why did she need my name on vaccine records? Mom had no answer. That is the cleanest part of proof. It does not need your enemy to understand it. The next morning, the public version tried to form. Logan posted that Second Chance Paws had voluntarily postponed adoptions to strengthen systems after overwhelming community interest. He did not mention forged signatures. Paige shared it with a crying selfie and wrote, rescue is hard, but love always wins. I screenshotted everything and sent it to Carla. Mrs. Avery, the Daisy donor, commented, will restricted donations be tracked separately? The post disappeared in 11 minutes. Deletion is not disappearance. Carla had the packet. Donors had questions. Volunteers had seen the files. A pet blogger had captured enough of the lobby moment to make the rescue's clean story impossible. Over the next week, the shelter had to rebuild from the floor. Every animal got a verified intake review. Daisy's adoption was paused, then properly evaluated. She had an untreated dental infection and needed blood work before placement. Mrs. Avery moved her pledge to Daisy's actual medical care through a restricted invoice system. The puppy litter got corrected vaccine schedules. Foster homes were retrained. 3 volunteers quit after learning their names had been marked trained before they completed sessions. 2 donors requested refunds. Logan's marketing agency lost a nonprofit client because no one wants a rescue compassion campaign tied to forged medical records. Paige stopped posting for 6 days, which in her world was a collapse. Dad came to my apartment on Thursday evening with a box of Milo's old toys that I had left at my parents' house years ago. It was not the apology I needed. but it was the only one he knew how to carry. I did not invite him in. We stood in the hallway. "I should have told her to stop using your forms," he said. "Yes." He looked at the floor. "I thought she just needed help. She needed accountability. Your mother thinks you went too far. Your mother thinks records are cruel until she needs them to prove Paige is innocent." He sighed. Were the animals really in danger? I looked at him for a long time. A senior dog had no completed clearance. A coughing dog had been moved through foster. Vaccine logs were not verified. Yes. His face changed then. Not fully, but enough. Dad loved animals in the simple way of men who fed strays and never read intake notes. I did not know. You did not ask. He nodded. That was the closest he came to understanding the family disease. Paige's apology came 2 weeks later, in the clinic parking lot after I had worked a 10-hour day. She looked smaller without the rescue sweatshirt, just jeans, a hoodie, and swollen eyes. Daisy needed a dental extraction, she said. I nodded. I heard. She is recovering. Good. Paige swallowed. I thought if I slowed down, animals would die waiting. That was the first honest thing she had said without an audience. Some might, I said. That is the awful part. But if you rush without records, different animals die later. She cried then, quietly. I did use your signature. I did not rescue her from saying it. She needed to hear herself. Yes. Logan said it was just formalizing what you already did. And you believed him because it helped you. She nodded. I am sorry. The apology was late and incomplete, but it faced the right direction. I said, never use my name again. Never use my clinic experience for credibility without permission. Never move an animal without a record because the story looks better fast. She said, okay. Maybe she meant it. Consequence can teach what love never managed. I did not take over second chance pause. People expected me to. That would have turned the whole mess into another invisible job. Instead, the county required Paige to hire an independent shelter compliance consultant and partner with a licensed veterinarian for medical oversight. I provided a corrected template package through formal contract only, with attribution, boundaries, and no use of my name as supervisor. Paige paid for it. Not mom, not donors. Paige. That mattered. Logan had to post corrected adoption policies. He hated every word. Good. Clear words are hard for men who prefer emotional fog. Daisy was adopted 2 months later by Mrs. Avery herself. Not at a gala, not on a live stream. At a quiet appointment after dental care, blood work, vaccine verification, and a slow meet and greet. Paige asked if she could film the adoption. Mrs. Avery said no. I loved her for that. Daisy left with a soft blue blanket and a file folder thicker than most people expected. That folder was not cold. It was the proof that, this time, Daisy's new life began with truth. I built something after that. Walker Rescue Compliance started as a free checklist I posted for fosters and small rescues. Verify vaccine records, track intake dates, quarantine unknown animals, document transport, separate restricted donations, sign foster medical consent, never copy clinic signatures, and never let urgency erase safety. It spread faster than I expected. Then I turned it into workshops for rescues, foster networks, donors, and volunteers. At the first workshop, I placed Milo's blue leash on the table beside a blank intake form and a sample vaccine log. I told them his story. Not to make them sad, to make them careful. A woman in the front row cried because she had lost a foster puppy after trusting a verbal vaccine claim. We went through every field line by line. Boring, necessary, loving. My mother still tells people I embarrassed Paige at her biggest moment. I tell people Paige listed me on medical records without consent. Only one of those sentences matters to the county. Dad sometimes sends me photos of dogs from the shelter with proper kennel cards now. I answer those. Paige and I are not close, but the animals at her rescue are safer than they were under the banner. Logan no longer points cameras at me. The volunteer badge that said Kennel Support is in my desk drawer, clipped to a copy of the forged signature page. Not because I need to stay angry, because I need to remember how easily women's work gets renamed when applause enters the room. Milo's leash hangs in my office now, under a small sign from my workshop. Compassion without records can still hurt the helpless. The brass tag still has scratches from the years he dragged it against door frames and kitchen chairs. I touch it before every shelter training. Not for luck, for memory. My family tried to call me the girl who cleaned cages because they thought cleaning was smaller than saving. They forgot that clean cages stop disease. They forgot vaccine logs protect the weak. They forgot records are how rescue proves it did not become another kind of neglect. They forgot that every animal behind those kennel doors needed more than Paige's tears and Logan's camera. They needed someone willing to be called cold while keeping them alive. So tell me, if your family used your name to make an unsafe rescue look legitimate, would you stay quiet because the animals needed homes? And if the inspector asked who signed the vaccine records, would you protect the performance or open the folder and let the records protect the ones who cannot speak?